if none of that works out, he doesn't like losing. He doesn't like failures. So he will be looking for an excuse to to get out of this.
This was the sound heard, though, in Kyiv last night. Now, a promise then to cease strikes on energy infrastructure didn't seem to add up so much. A hospital was hit in Sumy, and a city in Donetsk was plunged into darkness after a power station there was targeted. We can now welcome to the programme Igor Novikov, a former advisor to Volodymyr Zelensky on America relations. Hello to you, Igor.
Hello, hi.
Good to have you here. So they've had their conversation, President Zelensky and President Putin. What do you think Zelensky would have wanted to get from that? Do you think he may be resigned to Donald Trump being, well, at heart, sympathetic to Russia and to Putin?
Well, you actually said Zelensky and Putin. No, it was Zelensky and Trump.
Zelensky and Trump, forgive me.
That conversation, I think, is still quite far away, the other one. I think, look, I don't think Zelensky is resigned, but to the whole idea of, let it just play out. But at the same time, I think the main kind of goal for our president and for all of us at the moment is to try and slowly but surely explain to our American colleagues that Putin is not being sincere, that Putin doesn't want a ceasefire or the end to this war. And I can actually prove it to you really quickly. Look, if Russia wanted a ceasefire in the current conditions, all they need to do is just stop firing. Why? Because we have Donald Trump in the White House. If Ukraine fires a single shot after that, Trump will get his excuse to give up on Ukraine and be friends with Russia.
Yeah.
So, and yet Russia continues, the assault. Therefore, Russia does not want the ceasefire. And the conversation that we saw between Putin and Trump pretty much confirmed it. What is Ukraine going to do? Yeah, we're going to come up with a list of our energy sites that are not to be targeted in that proposed energy ceasefire, energy attack ceasefire. But to be honest, I'm even skeptical about that because Russia increases its assaults after any peace negotiations.
Yeah.
So that's unfortunately the rule of thumb here.
And Igor, you used the word excuse. Do you really believe that President Trump is looking for an excuse to break away from Ukraine and give no further help?
Well, to be honest, this is my subjective opinion. I think there are two outcomes that would be acceptable to Donald Trump here. I could be wrong, of course, but I think the first one and the best for Ukraine is when he gets a result. So when we get a ceasefire and end this war in a just peace with security guarantees, and he gets his Nobel Peace Prize and everyone is happy. So that's kind of the first outcome he's comfortable with. The second one, if none of that works out, he doesn't like losing. He doesn't like failures. So he will be looking for an excuse to to get out of this. And we already saw episode 1 of that in the White House. And unfortunately, we know of that problem and we're dealing with it.
Yeah, I mean, there has so far been no movement, Igor, on America giving any kind of security guarantee to Ukraine in the event of a ceasefire. And of course, we know that European friends of Ukraine want to put in forces to try to guard that ceasefire. What can Zelensky do about that, except, I suppose, press on and keep on trying to get that American guarantee?
Well, in the short term, he can do two things, and he's doing two things. One is to press on, as you correctly said, and try and get those guarantees. The second thing he can do is to try and unite Europe. As simple as that. It's not going to be an easy process. It's not going to be a quick process. There are many hurdles in the way. Prime Minister Orban, for example. But I think that's something that needs to be done regardless. And I think Ukraine is positioned well to actually lead the way here. Now, once that is done, Europe becomes a geopolitical player and, another avenue is open. So I think that's the plan B everyone needs to consider. Yeah. And actually, there's a very worrying development that nobody is even talking about, which for me is a telltale sign that, Trump is not interested in any kind of pushback against Russia anytime soon or ever. And that is to do with the fact that nobody, including the Americans, is mentioning the destinies of all the Russian dissidents, opposition leaders, and all the Russians who basically fled Putin's Russia.
Yeah.
Because of their resistance. I mean, one of my best friends is a Russian rapper called Noise MC. He's actually, he's been put up for a Nobel Peace Prize this year. And like, what does the future hold for him in a world where Putin and Trump kind of get their bromance and, you know, get along? I mean, what is going to happen to all those people? And if we disregard those people, if we kind of just let them be, or even worse, like deport them back to Putin or something like that, that pretty much condemns Russia to an authoritarian future for the next few generations without any alternative.
Yeah.
So, and I haven't seen any movement to that extent. And what I saw instead was, you know, the shutdown of Voice of America, which is unheard of.
Well, and then just last one. What about this, the coalition of the willing, as it's being described, America's friends in Europe, but not just in Europe, who are ready to commit troops and support for a force to go into Ukraine if there's a ceasefire and guard the ceasefire? I mean, Ukraine won't like it, and the potential members of the coalition won't like it. But the fact is, isn't it, Igor, that Putin does have a veto there, because you can't deploy those forces while the war goes on. They'd be joining in the war, and they don't and won't do that.
Well, I mean, like, to allow me to be frank here, what is the point in any peacekeeping forces if they cannot protect themselves? What is the West, what is Europe going to do if those forces are attacked? Either now or after the ceasefire or after even the peace deal.
Sure, but Igor, they can't even go in the first place unless there's a cessation of fighting, can they?
Well, like, look, we're back in, well, I think we're somewhere in between 1938 and 1939 at the moment. So between Neville Chamberlain and Winston Churchill. Like, it's the same kind of cognitive dissonance. Do we protect ourselves, or do we try and not escalate and pacify the aggressor? That's the question you need to ask yourself. If you put the troops there, be prepared to go all the way. If you don't put the troops there, well, then don't even mention it. Like, it's as simple.
Yeah, I mean, you're calling on those European allies to be ready to go across the border into Ukraine, even during a war, which implies joining in the war. Igor,
unless you want Russia to come to you first.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. I'm just suggesting to you that I can't imagine. Can you, Britain, France, those other countries, literally joining the war against Russia?
My imagination is a bit. Is at the later stage of its development at the moment, because on the 23rd of February 2022, I was in Kiev. I couldn't imagine what a missile strike sounds like. And then literally a few hours later, I heard one. So in a European capital. So I think, as crazy as this world is right now, I wouldn't discount anything.
Igor Novikov, good to talk to you. Thank you as always. Let's talk again soon. Former advisor there to Volodymyr Zelensky.